Good evening, everyone. We're going to call tonight's budget meeting to order. I'm going to start with an approval of the agenda with one slight change to the agenda that Ms. Syed will be under presentations tonight. So can I get an approval of tonight's agenda, please? Councillor Stevens and Councillor McIntosh, any questions or comments? Call the vote. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we had no closed meeting tonight, so we will move on to the singing of our national anthem. For those who are able, please rise.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We would like to acknowledge the treaty lands and territory of the Williams Treaty Nations and of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We also recognize that Dufferin County is the traditional territory of the Wendat and Haudenosaunee and is home to many Indigenous people today. This meeting is being aired on public television and or streamed live and may be taped for later public broadcast or webcast. Your name is part of the public record and will be included in the minutes of this meeting. If there are any members of the public connecting via telephone, you're reminded to press *6 to mute and unmute, and please remain muted until the chair requests comments or questions from the public. We do have no rise in report or adoptions of a previous council meeting. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Syed for her presentation tonight. Over to you.
Thank you, Worship, through you to your council and members of our audience tonight in the chambers and as well as community at large. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation per se. Instead, I will be sharing the report that I wrote for this particular meeting. But before we get into the report, I would like to acknowledge a couple of errors in the report itself. Under the financial impact section of the report, under bullet 5 and 6, there's mention of attachment. In fact, there are no attachments with this particular report, so it's an oversight on my part, and I do apologize. With that said, this is a short report, and it essentially captures some of the directions that this council given us on the night of 16th and 17th. So I will do a 5-minute quick overview. Everybody had a chance to read it. So we still have 2 recommendations for you to consider. There has been no changes as it relates to recommendation 1. Recommendation 1 still asks that council approves the 10-year capital budget and the 5-year operating budget as presented on December the 5th, proposing a consolidated tax levy of 3.1% for 2023, and any additional SLCs be funded through $3.5 million worth of ORDC money. So the recommendation 1 remains the same. Some of the changes happened in recommendation 2, and I'll walk you through it, but most of these changes are based on council direction or guidance or suggestions that we have heard on January 16th and 17th night. So if I can ask council to, or if I can bring your attention to the first paragraph presented under the analysis section. So I have heard council giving direction that tax rate should be reduced from 3.1 to 2.35. That is a net addition of $287,250. There has been a request from the mayor herself for an organization service level review to the tune of $150,000. Increase in community grant, which was discussed and approved and was put through a motion in the last budget meeting of $95,000. Additional contribution of $15,000 towards Orangeville Theatre. So the first 4 bullet points under the analysis are essentially directions, coming from this council. There was a very good conversation around tax write-off, and I have to thank Councillor Sherwood to really bring up that point that it is not prudent in any given year. It doesn't matter whether we have tons of appeals or not. And then concerns were raised from public as well. So based on that, I have added that back to the budget. So the overall addition of all those items is $797,000 and $250 rather. So that addition to the 2023 budget will now be funded, if I can bring you to page 3 of the report that I submitted before you. So all the other funding areas and levels remain the same. The only difference being we are now using ORDC interest earned for 2023 to the tune of the same amount that we would need from the analysis section. I did provide a little bit of information about ORDC investment. 29.5 million of ORDC sale of land have now been invested in 2 large buckets of GICs. So one of the things that I said on January the 17th, and I would like to reiterate, is already mentioned in the report, that at this point in time, 695,000, a little over 695,000 is guaranteed interest income. And I've also said, and I will read this, that if the market conditions remain the same for the second half of 2023, it can be reasonably, and that's the key word, reasonably extrapolated that similar interest yields as an interest would prevail. To be clear, for 2023, ORDC interest incomes based on the investment portfolio, 695,000 we are guaranteeing, and 862,000 we are projecting. So that's about 1.5. So can we reasonably say that we can fund the $797,000 that we are adding to the budget? Yes, my recommendation would be an absolute yes. So with that, I will let this council either further deliberate on this or ask me any question. But at this point in time, Your Worship, I would respectfully ask to council to approve this budget and choose one of the 2 recommendations that I've laid out in my report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Syed. Before I turn it over to the council team to ask any questions, I just wanted to make a couple of comments about the $150,000 that I requested be added. So at the last budget meeting, we did have a discussion at the council table about, we talked a lot about capacity issues within the organization. And I made the comment that in order to move forward, it would be prudent for us to do a service level review and an organizational review to really understand where we have some opportunities and gaps. So I just wanted to make it clear to staff and to council and to everybody here tonight that we've been listening. We've been listening to the GMs. We've been listening to all the managers. We've been listening to the staff concerns about capacity. And we want to make sure that we're taking care of it the right way. It's really important that we move forward in a way that's fiscally responsible, but is also responsible to the staff who are asking for help. So I want to be clear that we don't want to just put a Band-Aid on an area where there's actually a waterfall. We want to make sure that if there are capacity issues that are greater than we think there are, we need to address those and we need to understand what all of those are. So the conversation that I had with Mr. Osmond specifically was, how could we do this in a way that would make sense to the organization, to our strategic plan, to our directions going forward, and that would be fair for all staff to participate in, where they could really address some of the key issues that they're having with capacity. So when we talked about numbers, I had initially thought that maybe $80,000 or $100,000 would be enough, and I was brought into reality that even that cost of consultants has gone up significantly. So we've put a high-end cap on it at $150,000, and what we've asked is for Ray and the team to come back before the 2024 budget process begins with some identified capacity issues, so that when the next budget comes forward, we have a true understanding of what the FTE requirements are. Staff is then given a complete business analysis on what's needed to run the organization in the most effective way. And then it'll help council going forward to make sure that we can support staff in the way that they need to be supported with all of the information. With that, I will open it up to any questions that anybody has about what Ms. Syed has presented or mine. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, I wanted to thank Ms. Syed and her finance team and all the senior management for giving us a great budget document here. And thank you for taking some of our comments and concerns back and working with it and providing us with a good option. So at this time, Your Worship, I'd like to floor a motion that council approved the revised recommendation number 2, the 10-year capital budget, 5-year operating budget as outlined in the report, proposing a consolidated tax levy increase of 2.35% for 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Could I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor McIntosh. Was there any further questions? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Worship. First of all, thank you to you for bringing forward the idea of further investigation. I think for me, again, and being respectful of staff, I don't know what you know. I'm not in the building. We are the oversight board. I don't see what the operators do. And I mean, greatest respect for what the operators do. The piece for me is I don't want to spend the money on a consultant. I don't want to do that, but I don't see a way around doing this. And one of my questions here today was going to be about the amount that you've put forward, and is this the right amount? And it sounds like it might be. And I suppose once we hear from staff on is it, like my sense is it might not be. But the point of it is when you're going to put forward items that are going to hit this year, and then we'll hit next year on a new base with a new rate, and the next year with a new base on a new rate, and then on and on and on. We need to make sure that we're making the right decisions here today. And that's why I feel so good about what you put forward. And I thank you for doing so. And I just wanted to put my support out there publicly for it, because the public won't understand or won't like the idea of a consultant. They won't like the idea of the additional money, but I would liken it to, we're going to chop some trees down, and we really, really do need to sharpen our axe here before we do that, and just can't run ahead with such big outputs in terms of the financials for the town. So kudos to you, Mayor Post. I think it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Did you want Mr. Osmond to address the amount of the dollar amount first? Mr. Osmond, can I just turn it over to you for that? And then Councillor Stevens, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you and to Hall of Council, good evening. And we've had some conversation about this, and to narrow it really down, first off, this whole idea of the organization and corporate strategy review aligns with our strategy plan, our corporate strategy plan coming up in the next couple of weeks. But it's really important. The dollars are really important, Deputy Mayor, because you're right. I really don't have a crystal ball, and right now, I would suggest to you that the consultants' fees are just like the infrastructure numbers coming in. And we've done some recently, and they're really off the charts a little bit. So we did raise it from the initial number. And I think what will happen is that we're going to take it back, and we're going to put this into a package, an RFP that will define what we're looking for and try to meet the number, but at the same time, not to shortchange ourselves. There may be economies and something else we were doing now. We can combine it because it's timely. We agree from a staff perspective 100% that this is a good time. We're in a recovery year. During the recovery year, we get to take an opportunity to take a look at where we're going in the next, you guys in particular need to look at where you're going next 4 years. And it's no different than what we're suggesting with some of the major projects. Slow it down, take a look at it, take a serious look at it, be very informed on your decision making. And I think this is what this gives us. But the number, I'm going to leave it and say, yeah, we're going to try to make it do it for $150,000. If it goes a little higher, we would bring that back, because it's something that okay, here's where we're to and here's why. And we'd explain that. But the big thing for me right now is to get this thing moving as fast as possible. Timelines are really tight, believe it or not. Something like this is huge when you're looking right across the organization to put it all together. So that's what we're to. And I'm just going to hopefully make it with $150,000 and see what we can do. But it is going to be a pretty robust project when we start. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osmond. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. Through your worship. With recommendation number 2, how many FTEs does that give us moving forward?
Ms. Syed, does anything change from the original? No. Okay. From the report that we got on the 16th, 17th, it would be the list included there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
There was no changes or revisions to that, correct? Okay. Yeah.
That is correct.
Perfect. Was there any other additional questions? Councillor Andrews?
Thank you, Your Worship. And just a comment, and as we go through this process, it has been, as many of us agree, a long one, but we have to be transparent and congratulate and thank the staff who've been involved with this process. It's been lengthy. It can be sometimes confrontational. It can be difficult. But just to echo Deputy Mayor Taylor's comment, sometimes we're criticized in our role because, you know, we've added this or we've cut this or we're going to end up having a consultant to do this. Understanding we have expertise in-house, but we're also, as Mr. Osmond indicated, and I pointed this out the last time during budget deliberation, we have to be flexible. We have to be an organization that is somewhat cutting edge, which we are. We have great people, but we cannot have things that are put on the side of people's desks if we were going to be a progressive community. And I think that this budget reflects where we are today in a recovery mode, but I'm in full endorsement of what has been motioned. And I also want to thank Madam Mayor for putting forth some of the things that you have, especially with the allocation for additional support for some of the organizations that require some of that funding. Again, I thank you for doing so.
Thank you all for your support. Was there any additional questions? Okay, then I'm going to call the vote. All in favor of the recommendation on the floor right now? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you all very much. Item 13, we have no items of correspondence nor committee board minutes. There are no notice of motion prior to meeting. Do we have any tonight? Any notice of motion tonight? Seeing none. Any items of new business from any members of council? Again, seeing none. Question period. Are there any members connected via telephone right now that wish to speak for question period? No, nobody, Mr. Hawkins. Thank you. Any members in the gallery who wish to speak? Mr. Gristo, you can have a seat. Make sure the mic is on, please, and state your name and address for the record.
It's wheelchairs again, right? See that? It's good for tall people. I don't think it's that good for short people. Yeah, that's fine. All right. Anyway, Madam Mayor, as I requested last night, that I wish there would have been a recorded vote to this budget. I got a copy of the budget, which is page 21. When I look at the budget, it seems to be a pretty healthy budget for some of the, you know, the stuff around the town, such as the fire department. You're looking at 6.68% increase. 5.25 out of that. That's wage increases. That's insane in today's age. Where you got people out there that they have to go to the lighthouse to get food. That is not right.
I'm going to pause you there, Mr. Gristo. Councillor McIntosh wishes to comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Gristo, are you suggesting we lay off firefighters? Am I to understand that's what you're trying to say?
I didn't say lay off firefighters.
How do you cut the wages then?
What I said, an increase in wages. I did not say lay off.
It sure sounds like it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, can you tell me, okay, how much the firefighter gets when they get employed? As I understand in the past, it used to be $80,000. Can you spell it out for me now? As a former chief, how much they get now when they get hired? Through you, Madam Mayor.
Sherwood?
Through you, Madam, to Mr. Gristo, you being a previous member of council,
That is correct.
you know that when the budget's presented, how it's presented that every person is at job rate. So you know that not all of the employees will be at that, but you should know that that is the way the budget's presented.
Well, I also know, through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. McIntosh and to Ms. Sherwood, you both are under conflict of interest. And I'll tell you why. Because with wage increases, you're gonna get a kickback on your pension. You and Mr. McIntosh, I know that for a fact,
Mr. Gristo,
okay?
do you have a question for us tonight?
But the question it is, you know what? Mr. McIntosh should declare a conflict. And Mrs. Sherwood also should declare a conflict because she was working for the town too.
Councillor McIntosh.
Just for the record, I'm on an OMAS pension, which does not increase regardless of what the firefighters make. I sure wish it did, but unfortunately it doesn't. So if you continue that, Mr. Gristo, I might have to take legal action. Thank you.
Well, Mr. McIntosh, I've done my research. You can do whatever you want.
Mr. Gristo, I have not been an employee for the town of Orangeville for 11 years.
I
So I
understand
do not
that.
consider that being a conflict, and I do find that what your comments to me directly is very disrespectful. I am here not as a previous employee of this town of Orangeville. I am here to represent the town of Orangeville residents that elected me. So I would really much appreciate an apology from you for directing to
I
council.
don't believe you. I don't believe I should give you any
I think it's
apology.
very disrespectful.
I don't believe so. You know why? Because my son was working for Burnside, and every time the Burnside was on the papers, when I was here, I declare a conflict.
That's
Sir,
it.
I haven't worked here
Okay.
for 11 years.
Okay, Mr. Gristo, that's enough for tonight. Thank you very much.
Anyway, so the other one related to the water meters, Madam Mayor. You stated that it's been voted on. As I understand, you were correct. It's been voted on by the previous council.
Mr. Gristo, the water meter.
With the helm of the previous mayor, okay, at the helm of Mr. Deputy Mayor, Mr. McIntosh.
Mr. Gristo.
And not a public meeting
Mr.
was
Gristo,
a call.
I'm the chair of the meeting. I'm going to remind you of that right now, and I will take your comments. We've taken your comments. We've heard your comments about the water meters. The project is already moving forward. The budget has already been passed. We appreciate your comments here
My
tonight.
point, Madam Mayor, my point is, are you gonna call because you're the new mayor now? As a new council with 2 new members here, okay? Are you gonna call a public meeting by
No.
spending $7 million?
As I told you last night, Mr. Gristo, we will not be calling a public meeting on this item. It's already been voted on, and the project is already moving forward. Thank you
Well,
for your time here
You,
tonight.
you
Is
know
there
what
anybody
I,
else in the gallery who has questions for tonight? Mr. Gristo, that's enough.
you know what I said to you?
Mr.
I
Gristo,
wish I
your
knew
time is
this
up.
before the election. I would have made
Mute his mic.
an election.
Thank you. Was there anybody else in the gallery who has comments that they wish to ask this evening? Mr. Ray, if you can just have a seat and state your name and address for the record and just make sure the mic is on.
Is it on? Okay. Bill Ray, 213 Elmwood Crescent. First of all, a comment. Thank you very much for addressing the capacity issue. I know there's been a lot of discussion about that, and I look forward to further discussing that as we move ahead. Also, the other issue that's come up as part of the discussion is the future of Tony Rose and the future of how we grow services in this town that are recreational based, and maybe it's a library or other things, and whether that's Alder or Tony Rose. So what's the path forward in terms of determining a strategy on the life of Tony Rose and the other town assets that are so critical for our recreational union?
Excellent question, Mr. Ray. I will turn it over to Mr. Osmond. We've had several discussions about how we move forward on this item, so Mr. Osmond can explain.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Ray is a great question. This has been an item on the table now for a couple of years, and there's been a lot of things going on over COVID and so on. And as you know, a lot of our projects that we do that are certainly based on what happens to a particular building in the recreation world in particular, I think most of the council will agree it's data-driven. And we're without a couple of years of any data. So what we decided to do is delay the RFP. And what we've done on Tony Rose, we've combined the RFP to take care of a bunch of projects, Tony Rose being one, business case and future feasibility study, as well as the upstairs of Alder, and as well as the artificial turf field. And the reason for that is because we see in that environment, that area, potentially a campus kind of environment. And at the same time, in recent meeting, we had a discussion around the library, discussion around what do we do with the library. And what we said to council is all of the projects we have now, as you understand, are above the line, I'll call them. And the ones below the line, some of these big projects like the library project, Tony Rose, Rotary Park. And what we've asked council to do is let us get the information we need, the data we need, and the information we need so that we can have an informed decision and start another process. That process needs to be activated quickly because we're into 2023 and time is ticking. So what we want to do is we also want to engage the public in the process and stakeholders like the library boards and so on and so forth, Rotary Club, if you would, that goes those kinds of examples, and the public themselves. One of the very important things that we've heard on our side of the table, certainly on the council side of the table, they just fresh out of a campaign, out of an election process. And what we've been told, and we're taking this very seriously, is that we want to have more public engagement. So it really falls in line with the Tony Rose question, the library question, the Rotary Park question, and so on. There's a whole bunch of others. So what will happen now, Mr. Ray, is that we will actually launch the RFP for Tony Rose and the pieces I mentioned, and then we would start down the road with that, and we're hoping to get that finished before the budget process so that we can discuss it. The decision on Tony Rose will not be done in 1 year. It will take a period of time for us to get into Tony Rose and then actually look at what his future will look like. Will it be different than it is now? Will it be repurposed? Will it be redesigned? All the spaces around Tony Rose that we've protected for a long number of years, what happens to the spaces around Tony Rose? And another one that we talked about was a library. Just briefly on the library, as you know, when we did the CICP application process a couple of years ago, we looked at putting a new library as a design at the time attached to Alder. Well, now that we have that question on the table in 2023, where will that end up? Will it be still a question of putting it on Alder? Will it be somewhere else in town? That's about the old feedback piece, if you would, from the public, from the community, and then council will make a decision on that. So there's a lot of big decisions on the table in 23 to say, okay, where to from here? And during the budget process, we made this quite clear, is that we don't want council to, not we don't want, but we would recommend to council that you leave these big major projects and take your time and have the debate, have the discussion, get the information from other sources that would supply us information through consulting reports and so on and so forth, feasibility studies, and then you can sit around the table. Then we can do the public engagement. Then you can talk about the piece I left out of this conversation is what do you do with some funding that you have? Where do you earmark that funding? What's the best investment for you for those dollars in all these facilities or something you're doing now already? So these are the questions on the table or left on the table. And my hope would be this council will make that decision in 23. It might be obviously part of the 24 budget and budgets beyond 24, but the decision year would be most likely be 23 for those major projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osmond. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I thank Mr. Ray for the question, and Mr. Osmond, and thank you for this too. I mean, I'm absolutely fascinated by how this term is going to deal with that issue. And I just wanted to pull out, I think as a council, it needs to be our commitment that maybe we don't have this building built. I mean, it's only 3.5 years away before we're done the term. So clearly that's not going to happen. But to Mr. Osmond's point, we should have a plan in place. And if it's not this council that's executing it, that's fine. But it should be tied up with a red ribbon and given to the next 7 people that are sitting in these chairs and be ready to roll with it. It's just too important to leave any further. But we need to do that heavy lifting and set it up for them in a way that, oh yeah, that makes sense. So I wanted to make that point. And if I may, could I make one other one just to?
Absolutely, Deputy.
I guess, can I just respond to that?
Yeah, for sure.
I guess that was the essence of my question, because if you don't start planning for it now, what doesn't get planned doesn't get done, right? So.
Deputy Mayor.
My other comment isn't directed at Mr. Ray. If I could, I just wanted to direct it to Mr. Gristo, and that is Mr. Gristo did ask me to have an open vote, like a recorded vote. Sorry, I'm losing my mind. I didn't feel that was necessary, Mr. Gristo, so I didn't follow through on it simply because I felt like we were going to be unanimous, and we were. So I don't know why you'd have a recorded vote if you're unanimous. All 7 of us said yes to the passing of the budget, so everyone was on the same page, and that's why I did that.
You can come up and have a seat again and speak into the mic, please.
I said to you, record.
You need to turn the mic on, please.
I think it's on.
Oh, perfect. There we go.
Recorder vote means that the names, they're printed in there. When you don't call a recorder vote, it's only a vote. Okay, I'm here. I seen it. It was a unanimous decision to approve it. But when you call a recorder vote, it means every name is printed in the minutes. Who vote in favor or whoever vote against. Thank you.
Is there any other questions from members of the public? Seeing none. Okay, we are at bylaws. There's a recommendation that the bylaws listed below be read 3 times and finally passed, and it's the confirmatory bylaw of the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Orangeville at its budget meeting held tonight, January 24th. Can I have a motion to approve that? Councillor Andrews and Councillor Prendergast, any questions or comments? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. And a motion to adjourn, please. Deputy Mayor and Councillor McIntosh, all in favor? And carried unanimously. Have a lovely evening, everyone.